InvestorIdeas.com podcasts.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of InvestorIdeas.com podcasts. In today's podcast, I'm going to be looking at a few public and private company announcements, looking at Reformulary Group, as well as MediPharm Labs Corporation, trading on the TSX as Labs and the OTCQX as MEDIF, Plus Products Incorporated, trading on the CSE as Plus and the OTCQX as PLPRF, as well as THC Biomed International Limited, trading on the CSE as THC. So first starting with Reformulary Group, who is an expert-led healthcare company that helps Canadians make sense of medicine for prescription drugs and medical cannabis, announced the launch of its Cannabis Standard Index. Now, the index uniformly categorizes medical cannabis products based on objective data, allowing Canadians and the medical community to find accurate, detailed information and to reliably search and compare products. We want to help patients and their doctors make sense of medical cannabis, so we worked with a group of experts to develop a standardized classification system, as this is the norm with prescription and over-the-counter drugs, but designed explicitly for cannabinoid-based medicine, said Helen Stevenson, the founder and CEO of Reformulary Group. Now, the Cannabis Standard Index makes it possible for patients and healthcare professionals to search and compare cannabis products and to determine which is similar or interchangeable. Now, the index is an educational tool that allows medical cannabis patients and their doctors to access and compare products made by different licensed producers using objective data such as composition, form rather than strain name. And as there are no industry standards for the naming of strains, some producers may apply strain names to products with different concentrations of cannabinoids. And by indexing products using objective data, including the presence of major THC, CBD, and minor cannabinoids THCA, CBDA, CBG, CBC, CBN, where the information is available, the index can help guide reliable prescription and therapeutic substitutions. And so when a medical cannabis patient seeks a change in product type or when a patient's usual LP runs out of stock, they can find an effective alternative. Now, a national study conducted by the RIWI Corp, a global trend tracking and prediction technology firm, in the summer of 2019 revealed that 2/3 of medical cannabis patients were interested in a rating system that categorizes cannabis into product types and helps consumers compare products. Now, the index is the latest edition of Cannabis Standard, an ecosystem of expert recommendations, patient-powered tools, and independent information to help Canadians and healthcare professionals make smarter, more informed decisions about medical cannabis. The addition of the index to the Cannabis Standard ecosystem empowers patients and healthcare practitioners to access and elevate medical cannabis with the same level of sophistication as with prescription drugs, said Dr. Alan Bell, family physician and assistant professor in the Department of Family and Community Medicine at the University of Toronto. Rather than relying on a product strain name or user-generated reviews, we now have a system to help categorize and differentiate medical cannabis using data relevant for doctors and patients, he added. When medicine makes sense, we all benefit, said Mr. Stevenson, who is the former Assistant Deputy Minister of Health in Ontario. In this role, she ran Ontario's $4 billion drug program, overseeing the Ontario Drug Benefit Formulary, and the Cannabis Index borrows from some of the same principles as Reformulary's award-winning Drug Finder tool. And Drug Finder is broadly offered to Canadian employers for their paying members and provides patients and plan members with evidence-based information about their medication, empowering them to make informed decisions. So we've seen a few similar types of indexes like this come out in the past from different medical cannabis programs. A lot of, I would say, a little bit more informed sort of indexes have come out in the past. This one, I do like that they're trying to make a standardized system that's easy to use for both patients and practitioners. But the difficulty, and it's something I've discussed a couple times in the past, is the uniqueness of cannabis when it comes to dealing with each patient individually. As again, everyone has their own unique endocannabinoid system, and even from a strain-specific or a chemical compound-specific description of cannabis, there's still always going to be missing factors. So I do like that they're obviously focusing on the very basics right there: THC, CBD, other microcannabinoids. I would expect that they'll probably add some sort of terpene spectrum, as that does have a huge influence on the overall efficacy of your cannabis product, is the sort of combined work or the entourage effect. And again, this is going to be a continued probably development and issue for the medical cannabis market, both Canadian-wise and globally, as again, this is a very difficult medical product to prescribe for a patient-by-patient basis, as again, you could have a strain literally grown from the same producer. but has one micro difference as far as how it was interacted with from the growers, or maybe how it was processed differently, or even a different amount of sunlight or air or something, that could change some of the minor chemical components, and that could have a huge difference in efficacy for that person in that particular circumstance. So we found through tons of different studies, and there's a lot of this research is still coming out of the Israeli medical cannabis market, but they've shown tons of results showing that the difference of some of these terpene profiles, or very, very low microcannabinoids that we don't even have names for, instead of it being, a THCA, it's simply like microcannabinoid 136857 or something like that. There's a lot of minor chemicals within each of these plants, and a lot of those have a huge impact on the overall health benefits. So, for instance, with cancer reduction, they found that some of these cannabis plants, even grown at the same facility, same strain, same everything, just because of these very minuscule differences in growing conditions or something that affects the plant biology. Some plants had a huge effect in reducing cancer, some had zero effect. So this is going to continue to be a struggle. I do like that they're trying to create a cannabis standard, and trying to create a simple index for consumers again and practitioners. I do think that there's a lot more data that needs to be provided, and I do think that the idea that you're going to be getting away from personal sort of reviews of each of these products is a mistake. I do think that you need both. You need to have both the objective data of including all the microcannabinoids, all the terpene profiles. You do need to have the strain name. I think that them ignoring the strain name is a preposterous idea. There does need to be more uniformity with companies using strain names, but to try and say that because there's inconsistencies, we should stop using strain names is a preposterous mention. I think that you're still going to have to stick with some of these strain names. There was speculation that you were going to see sort of the removal of strain names over time. That's clearly not the case, and it still is a very useful tool for identifying some of the properties of the cannabis products you're going to be using. Obviously, again, one strain grown from one company can have huge different chemical profiles than the same strain grown from a different company, depending on the growing conditions. But again, having that strain name as a reference point is going to be useful, and having the consumer reviews, especially from medical patients. So that's why I said that some of the other medical cannabis indexes that have already been created have been a little bit more effective in that they do provide tons of patient information. So they're not just speculating on, oh, this is the chemical compounds of these plants and it will work with patient A. They've actually had tons of data over years. And that's what's going to be needed for this to really be instructional and helpful. Is you're going to need tons of patient data in combination with tons of data on the actual plants. And this is also where we've seen a lot of interest in both genetic interest in plants, as well as going with combination of genetics for people. So matching the genetics of a strain with the genetics of a patient, because again, as each endocannabinoid system is completely unique, we do have to sort of map out genetically what in each patient is going to be more receptive to what each strain can produce. So again, I do think that this is a step in the right direction, but as far as the information they provide so far, still a little beginner. And I do think that they'll need to provide a lot of that information that they're saying isn't quite necessary right now, and we'll need to do a combination of both things. Moving on to MetaPharm Labs Corporation, who today announced that its wholly owned subsidiary MetaPharm Labs Incorporated will supply premium formulated cannabis oil to Cannafarms Peru, a Lima-based producer and distributor serving Peruvian and other markets in Latin America. So this is MetaPharm Labs' first such agreement in Latin America, and the most recent example of the company's international growth strategy in action. As part of this strategy, the company has expanded its addressable medical wellness and adult use markets to parts of Asia Pacific, Europe, and now Latin America. Now, MetaPharm Labs is creating footholds in medical wellness and adult use markets around the world and in Latin American countries. And with a combined population of approximately 580 million and beginning with its fifth largest country, Peru, Latin America factors highly into the company's business plan. As an early mover among Latin American countries, Peru has created a legal framework for producing, importing, and selling cannabis for medical use. And as a result, Peru's market is advancing rapidly and offers the potential to register varied formats of cannabis-based products. Using a range of pricing, consumption, and patient data sets, the LATAM Cannabis Report by Prohibition Partners forecasts that LATAM market is expected to exceed $12 billion by 2028, offering serious growth potential to global cannabis companies. Peru is one of the top medical cannabis markets in the world, and Can Farm is one of the very few cannabis companies which hold both a drogeria license and cannabis importation license, which makes this agreement an outstanding strategic value to MetaPharm Labs, said Pat McCutcheon, the CEO of MetaPharm Labs. As we pursue our global ambitions, it's vital for us to partner with companies on CanPharm's caliber who know their local markets intimately, who have a real application for the needs of patients, and our ongoing commitment to scientific advancement and a sound plan for regional expansion, which we expect great things from this collaboration. And under the 1-year renewable agreement, MetaPharm Labs will provide a variety of cannabis concentrate formats with optionality for patient-ready formulated products. So obviously, next new market in Latin America. I've talked a lot about Colombia as one of the biggest sort of areas within the Latin American market where you're seeing tons of production and exportation. That's also where a lot of the bases for the medical cannabis programs have been coming out of. And I will say that a lot of the other Latin American countries that are now starting to pop into a medical cannabis program are definitely looking at the Colombian model as a good sort of skeleton to base their medical programs off of. Again, they have seen a lot of success in Colombia so far, so I do expect that a lot of the other newer Latin American countries will also adopt similar policies and similar strategies. I know that some of them will obviously be a little bit looser with some of the regulations to gain some sort of competitive advantage over being, setting up your cannabis facility in, for instance, Colombia or another country. So I do think that Peru will probably be quick to allow for exportation and importation, which is what it seems here, and will probably be a little bit more lenient with regards to sort of the standards of their facilities. I don't know as far as right now if they have the sort of necessity of EU GMP certification for all the facilities, whereas in Colombia, that's pretty much a necessity. So again, looking at these Latin American countries as more and more start to develop their own cannabis programs, there is going to be a bit of a competitive fight when it comes to regulations, where you're going to see some countries have looser standards or more competitive standards to gain more financing and also bring in more business to their country. As again, Latin America, one of the places that's definitely been impacted quite heavily by COVID-19, and it's definitely looking for, like everywhere in the world, some economic stimulus, which they're planning on probably using through cannabis. So next, looking at Plus Products Incorporated, who today announced the launch of its new Plus Sleep brand in the California adult use market. Now, the 4 key ingredients to promote a well-rounded night's sleep: THC, CBN, CBD, and just a touch of melatonin. All natural colors and flavors with only 0.7 grams of sugar and 5 calories per gummy, and 2 formulations to offer multiple potential solutions to a wide range of consumers. So there's Sleep Cloudberry with 5 milligrams of THC, 1 milligram of CBN, and 1 milligram of CBD, along with CBN Relief Lychee with 1 milligram of THC, 2 milligrams of CBN, and 3 milligrams of CBD. Now, Plus's new sleep gummies are scientifically formulated with a precise blend of cannabinoids and melatonin, intended to help consumers fall asleep quickly and enjoy a full, restful night's sleep. Recent research in the interaction between cannabis and endocannabinoid system and the body's natural circadian rhythm drove Plus's formulation for the 2 new sleep products. Each cannabinoid was selected for how it promotes better sleep, but together they have the potential to be greater than the sum of their parts. This is often referred to as the entourage effect, which we also included in physiological dose of melatonin to support our body's circadian rhythm so that these gummies actually work in concert with our natural system, stated Dr. Ari Mackler, the chief scientific officer. And we're excited to help 71% of cannabis sleep aid users who are not satisfied with their current remedies, stated Jake Hiermek, the CEO and co-founder. Almost 50 million people in the U.S. suffer from insomnia, and it's no surprise we hear all the time that one of the top things people look for when they walk into a licensed retailer is something to help them sleep. I do think this is a obviously smart plan from Plus Products. This is something I haven't seen tons of within the space so far, is having products specifically branded and designed for sleep, which it does seem almost stupid how there isn't an abundance of products that are specifically devoted to sleep, as that is one of the number one things you would hear in almost every dispensary, and especially with new consumers. So talked a lot about how most of these companies, their real aim should be trying to get the people who are not smoking cannabis to come on board with their products and programs, as opposed to trying to convince the people who are already smoking cannabis. Obviously, if you've already been smoking cannabis for years and you've been buying illegally or buying illicitly, these new recreational products, potency-wise, cost-wise, aren't going to really be that appealing to you. However, if you're a person who's been debating cannabis for years and the legality of it, suddenly having a legal access point is all you really need for convincing you to try these products, and you are going to be looking for lower dose options because you haven't built up a tolerance to this over years. So I do think that this is a very smart strategy for any company. They should be having more sleep specific brands out there again, and they should be focusing on how to make these products more effective, like Plus Products has by adding a little bit of melatonin to, again, work in tandem with your natural circadian rhythms. So I'm sure that they're going to probably see pretty aggressive sales for these, and I'm sure you're going to start to see more companies obviously wake up to the fact that they should have this type of branding. You've seen lots of things for rest, relaxation, calm, those types of brand names. I do think you need to have an obvious one for sleep. And I think that that's going to be a simple sell for most people is if you come into a cannabis store and you hear this is exactly designed for you to go to sleep and there's multiple options and multiple flavors, that's most likely where you're going to go with. And also smart that they're focusing on edibles. Obviously, for most people, again, newer consumers, they're looking for the second generation products. So you wouldn't really have a lot of purpose behind a sleep brand joint versus a sleep brand edible or drink. Speaking of drinks, that brings me to today's last announcement from THC Biomed International Limited, who has announced that it shipped its ready-to-drink cannabis beverage shot THC Kiss to the Ontario Cannabis Store, and OCS is the only legal online retailer of recreational cannabis in Ontario. Now, THC Kiss is also available in BC and Saskatchewan, and is in discussion with other provinces to widen its distribution. Now, THC Kiss is a breakthrough cannabis beverage shot that promises to offer a different experience compared to the edibles and beverages currently available in either the gray or legal cannabis market. The THC Kiss aims to be an alternative to smoking cannabis and was developed by THC Biomed using proprietary extraction methods invented by THC Biomed. We are proud to bring Canadians a true alternative to smoking cannabis, commented John Miller, the president and CEO. And we continue to receive very positive feedback from consumers, and we've received many requests that indicate a high demand from our current products and those in development. THC Biomed continues to deliver a wide array of cannabis products to cater for all classes of cannabis consumers, and in addition, all of our products are developed, manufactured, and packaged by THC Biomed itself, finished Mr. Miller. So I've talked a little bit about the THC Kiss drink before, but really what gives it a competitive advantage within the beverage space today is its size and its potency. So one of the biggest complaints you're starting to see now as more and more consumers enter into the new legal cannabis space, at least in the Canadian market, is potency levels. So obviously anyone who's coming in and getting these edibles, it's 10 milligrams per package is your limit. So if you have 5 gummies in there, they're dropped down to 2 milligrams per gummy. And for a complete person with no cannabis tolerance whatsoever, that may give them some of the effects that they're looking for from those edibles. But probably even within a week or two of consuming any of these products or beginning to be a cannabis consumer, your tolerance is going to rise high enough that all of those products are going to be basically obsolete. Similarly with the beverages, a lot of them are a larger format drink with a low amount of potency sort of per sip or per volume. Whereas the THC shot, small format, and is a quick and easy shot drink. Now, why that's good is because it's a quick way to get that cannabis into your system. It is a little bit more impactful. And so it's somewhat given them the advantage of potency within a potency limited market. Now, again, obviously, some people obviously don't want to have just a shot drink. So you're not going to have everyone jump on board with this. But for a lot of people who are looking for a substitution for smoking and they're looking for something that's quick, potent, and easy to consume, again, not wanting to sit there and slowly drink, a 500 or 700 milliliter beverage, or not wanting to eat an entire chocolate bar or an entire series of gummies. This is a nice, again, low calorie, low sugar, simple format that I do think is going to have good success in Ontario. It's done well in BC and Saskatchewan and will probably do well in the other provinces once they get there. And I do think you're going to eventually see other cannabis producers create similar formats. Again, I think that this is still going to be a very difficult market to navigate with regards to potency levels for the next year or so until that gets changed by the Canadian government. And it definitely will have to get changed, as a 10 milligram potency for recreational cannabis is pretty much worthless for most people. And again, I know that there's all the reasons of keeping it away from the kids and blah, blah, blah. But most of that is pretty much just crazy nonsense anyways. So I do think that eventually, once the stigma surrounding cannabis slowly dissipates, which we have seen over the last 2 years and continue to see, I think that you'll have a little bit of a raise in potency, at least to 100 or maybe 200 milligrams. I don't think it's ever going to go to like 1,000 or 500 like we've seen in the US or in the medical markets. But I do think that it needs to be at least within the 100 range, even for CBD products, as that's how you get the real efficacy of those products. And again, cannabis is unfortunate in that you do build your your resilience to it quite fast. It's very easy to build up your sort of cannabis resistance and suddenly need to consume a lot more. That is one of the theories of why, or the speculation whenever you hear talk of cannabis is addictive. That's somewhat what they're referring to, is that you can build up a tolerance quite fast, which forces you to consume higher levels. But again, it's not going to be anything that's necessarily dangerous to your system. And I also think that this will be a good market as well, which I've talked about a couple of times, for some of those cannabis detox programs that are sort of getting the cannabis out of your system so you can sort of reset your tolerance and have these lower potency products be effective. But for right now, this again, the THC Biomed Kiss does have a little bit of advantage in the beverage space, and I'm sure will continue to until new products get made. That's all for today's podcast. Enjoy the rest of your day. That's all for today's podcast. Podcast is now a certified word trademark on the blockchain through Cognate Incorporated CM certification. InvestorIdeas.com podcasts are also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and TuneIn. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor of this podcast, please contact InvestorIdeas.com. Investor Ideas reminds all listeners to read our disclaimers and disclosures on the InvestorIdeas.com website, and this podcast is not an endorsement to buy products or services or securities. Investors are reminded that all investments involve risk and possible loss of investment. Investor Ideas does not condone the use of cannabis except where permissible by law. Our site does not possess, distribute, or sell cannabis products.